every time you put a dent in the universe, it kind of like has a fractal explosion of new problems where you can apply that new discovery that you've made. Right?
So look, let's jump into it. Thanks so much for joining us. Like we said, a lot of people that we're speaking to are engineering managers, engineering leaders. In general, everyone's interested in the career path that you took to get where you are. So it'd be great to start off. If you could run us through what did your career look like and how did you end up in a role of director of engineering, or what was the steps that you took to get there?
So yeah, I guess my first big break and one of the best decisions of my life came when I decided to move from Spain to Chicago to finish my studies, finish my master's degree in computer science. I just went to Chicago, to Illinois Tech. I finished my studies there. I joined a company as a software engineer there in Chicago. It was called Navtech, pioneering in maps. And it still had that little bit of a startup vibe to it. But I saw its transition from a startup to a more old school software company. I guess my second big break was just taking that experience in maps to join an early stage startup in San Francisco called Navdy. So Navdy was pretty futuristic, I would say. It was head-up display for cars with optics, with embedded systems. It was so exciting. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the biggest break of my life.
This was like roughly what date are we at this point?
This was 2015, right? When
Things were starting to heat up, right? Okay.
Yeah, things were starting to heat up in the San Francisco tech scene, especially in the city, right? Because Silicon Valley, as we all know, South Bay, Palo Alto, that area was the big thing back in the 90s. But then 2010s kind of moved to San Francisco with Twitter, with many other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined this at a warehouse with absolutely cracked engineers who I was like, whoa, this is a completely different level. And it was pretty stressful at the beginning to come up to that level. But with time, I managed to get there. I stayed for a year and a half and then the company failed, actually. So I got to experience startups as a software engineer in all of their ups and downs, right? All the excitement at the beginning, all the hype. And then, yeah.
Look, I think there is value in getting one of those experiences relatively early. I think we all go into this thinking like, oh, well, my friend was super successful and got rich off startups. So, I'll be just like him. And that kind of punch in the face where you learn that like it's hard.
Yeah.
It's sometimes good for you to learn that lesson before you have too much to lose.
Exactly. Because you might be tempted to think that startups are easy and they're not.
Yeah.
And
the media, like everyone's incentivized to make it look easy. All the media stories are all the success stories. Like the failures just quietly drift away or they pretend they got acquired for a good value.
Exactly. So that's the thing. And after Navdy, I joined another startup, early stage as well, also in hardware, called Rylo, 360 camera. Pretty cool, pretty awesome. But I felt like something was off in terms of my industry choice and in terms of consumer hardware. I've always been interested and I've always been baffled by the American healthcare system. I come from a country with a somewhat functioning healthcare system. It's not perfect by any means, but Spain has a decent healthcare system at a much lower spend and for a much less income rich country than the US. So I've always been baffled, like, how is this so broken? And can I do something to fix it? And I started exploring. I left Rylo after almost 2 years and I joined Stride Health. So Stride was by then pretty I believe it was around Series A. So a little later stage than I had been used to in my last couple startups, but still pretty early stage, I would say. And so I joined Stride Health as a software engineer. I grew the company really. I was the first member of the mobile team, started going on mobile, just doing back end because I guess you got to wear many hats, right? The proverbial hats. And I just started doing back end engineering and doing some stretching myself. Then I guess the third big break happened for my career I'd like to think of myself as a reluctant manager because I remember my manager back then, Stride's old VP of engineering, telling me, "Hey, I think you can be a good manager." But I was
Mm,
like, "I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I want to build things, and this is going to
yeah.
get me away from building and into a lot of meetings. I dread having my days filled with meetings, and I'm not sure." And she was like, "Hey, try it out." So Mafi who's been a fantastic mentor to me, and I love her to death. And she really mentored me. And she really went the extra mile for me to feel
Yeah.
comfortable in the role of an engineering manager. And I found that I enjoyed it. Yeah.
You enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
was going to ask, like, what was the transition like? I remember just very clearly when I made that shift that the the hardest thing for me was I would lose those blocks of the day where I could focus on
Yeah.
one thing for like 4 or 5 hours. But the experience a bit different for everyone. So for you, what was the transition like? Easy? Did you like dealing with people? Were there challenges?
I think it was honestly easier than I thought because I started with a small team. I started with just a couple people. I got tons of mentorship, and I feel like that for new managers, that's key to have a great leader that can mentor you. You can have, you, and especially like an engineering leader who knows how the sausage is made. Really, it's really hard if you're a founding engineer, for example, and you don't have engineering leadership to
Mhm.
go to your first management job without mentorship from an engineering leader. And I was fortunate that I had that. She helped me navigate how to keep a high bar, how to keep accountability, how to be accountable, how to be a servant leader for my team, and then how to hire, how to grow a team, how to leverage yourself. And
Yeah.
that truly is the key to management that I feel like I enjoy is you only have so many hours in the day as an
Yeah.
individual contributor. So your impact is capped. And if you really want to leverage yourself, you're going to have to hire people. You're going to have to manage them. You're going to have to lead them, and you're going to have to keep that high bar and nurture their growth. That's how
Hmm.
you grow. That's how they grow. And that was my biggest realization when I became a manager is that I could really leverage myself. I could get things done that are unthinkable if you're
Yeah.
an individual contributor and you can really drive company's goals, a whole team, get lots of stuff done. Really,
Yeah. There is something magical about when a team's working well together, like the amount.
yes,
How do you, we'll come back in a little bit to the story of you arrived where you are now, but how do you now try and grow as an engineering manager and leader? I think a lot of people, even if they had a great experience like you early on in their career with some kind of mentorship or help from peers, it gets harder the more and more senior you get, or sometimes if you're working at a company as CTO, all of a sudden you find yourself as the most senior tech person in the organization and to look for to peers or to other people to keep developing. What do you do today to try and keep improving your skills?
yeah. I mean, just knowing that you're not going to be the smartest person in the room and
Hmm.
embracing that. I mean, you can't know everything, and as your scope increases, you have this breadth and this depth in terms of the vision and the business, but you don't have the technical depth that you used to have. That you don't know all the details. You need to be at peace with that. You need to leverage people who you trust and who you can
Hmm.
rely on to zoom in and give you that zoomed in version whenever you need it,
Hmm.
and vice versa. You need to be able to communicate that vision, that direction, and lead a team to do things that actually move the needle, right? To create an effective
Yeah.
team. In terms of skill sets, there comes a time, yes, when you become the most senior person in the engineering organization. And I've had that at Stride Health right now. I mean, I'm no longer at Stride, even though I love the team there. And I'm at my new company, Vibrant, which I founded. And I'm the CTO. So it's really the engineering team. Now it's starting to grow a little bit, but it has been just me until very recently. And there's the fact that you need to start looking outside of your team. And they call it networking. They have many terms for it. But it's true that once you become the most senior technical person, you have to start looking outside at other leaders, at other
Hmm.
companies who are probably 1, 2 years ahead of you in terms of
Yeah.
their progression and their companies, the challenges that they're seeing. and really make a conscious effort to connect with them and to reach out, talk about things, workshop things, and start creating this support system
Mhm.
around you of other smart people, other engineering leaders that can give you advice to navigate what become really tricky situations, and the stakes become really high as you keep growing. And when you're a founder, when you're a CTO, the stakes are high because you're in the business of making decisions, making the right decisions, maybe not very frequent decisions, but you have to get the big picture right.
Yep.
And for that, it is really important that you look outside and you look at other people who are doing great things in the industry, because you might not have the resources to build that
Yep.
team right now. My startup, we don't have the resources, right? We're pre-seed, so we got to look elsewhere. So yeah.
No, it's a really interesting balance because often it feels like socializing. You're calling up peers and saying, "Will you get a beer?" And you're basically just talking about work. But it's surprising how in those moments when you really do need help, like you're at a crucial decision and you can call up someone that's been making that decision beforehand and can tell you the trade-offs. Like there are just these moments where being able to, like having had a beer with someone and the fact they'll take your call and give you honest advice can be super useful.
Exactly.
It's I heard a CTO talk about this situation where him and a group of other CTOs were all getting beers and they were just kind of complaining about, oh, I hired this guy and it didn't work out. It set us back a number of months. And then the other one had a similar experience. The third one had a similar experience. They worked out that actually all hired the same person and he'd had the same problems at each three companies. And they're like, man, we should be doing reference checks before we hired.
Yeah.
Such an obvious, silly thing, but little bits of information flowing back and forth can be super useful. But are there any do you do any any specific study about it? Like, are there any blogs or YouTube channels or any communities that you actively try and participate in to try and build that group of people that you can call for advice?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there are a few communities that lately I've been very involved into, right? So I mean, I've been a long time, and I believe like many of the listeners will be familiar with Hacker News. It's the oldest community, the most revered. So I get a lot of my just seeing trends, seeing things, cool things that other engineers put together. Great discussion. I love to read the comments. My wife always jokes about like,
If I
we
read
love
the
to read the
comments before
comments.
the articles, right?
Exactly. You actually don't even read the article. You do read the comments, and I'm like, yeah, because that's where the true insight is, right? An article can be like a lot of fluff, but you'll get great signal just reading the comments and participating, right? There's Hacker News. There's this amazing community in my current field, which is health tech. That's called Health Tech Nerds. It's a Slack community, it's a Slack channel, but I don't know how they do it, but they're awesome. Like that community is just so active, so helpful. They've hit the spot between great content, great community building, both digitally and physically. They organize events, and it started as a Slack channel. But if you're in health tech, by all means, join that community. As we all know, the U.S. healthcare system, I remain baffled, even though I'm building a startup in that space. But it's super, super helpful. I would recommend if anyone is listening to really join Health Tech Nerds if you're interested in health tech. Another great community that I found is the AI engineer community. It's San Francisco centric. There's this guy Swix who organizes it, and super interesting to be at the bleeding edge, at the forefront of AI engineering these days. They put together a conference last year. They've done another one, I believe 2 weeks ago. I couldn't go to this year's conference, but I'm devouring the video. So the YouTube channel for the AI engineer conference is amazing. They also have a Slack group, right?
Let's get into that. That's normally my kind of finishing questions are about your thoughts on AI. But one of the things I'm really enjoying with is every time we meet an engineering leader, nobody has the same opinion on AI. And the great thing is nobody can possibly know because everything's changing so quickly. I'd love to hear how you think it's going to change work, how people run engineering teams, like your job in the future. How do you think AI is going to impact that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to change everything. People like, I love seeing these people run many polls about like, okay, is
Mhm.
AI underhyped, overrated, just right? I honestly think it's underhyped. I think it's underrated. It's probably short term, it's a tiny bit overrated, but long term, and I'm talking about the next decade or so, it's
Mhm.
heavily underrated. We have no idea how many things are going to change with AI. And I mean, software engineering is a field that's probably the field that's changing the most
Mhm.
rapidly because it is software engineers, the ones who have built AI and now they're applying it to their own profession
Mhm.
with great success, I would say. I feel like the job of the software engineer is absolutely going to change. It's not going to disappear. Many people are
Mhm.
saying it's over for software engineers. They are, yeah, the profession of a software engineer is disappearing. There's don't learn to code. I don't think that's right. I think it's just that the layer of abstraction for a software engineer is
Mhm.
going to be much, much higher. So you can, instead of being an IC, an individual contributor, and that's how I map it to even my own experience, right? You're getting more leverage.
Mhm.
You're going to become a manager of swarms of AI coding agents. Every single software engineer, the skills that will matter are going to be more architecture skills. They're going to be more related to just having a bigger picture, building more, leveraging yourself. So that's what's really going to matter instead of memorizing APIs or being familiar with a certain tech stack. And I believe that's truly what being an engineer is for, right? You're an engineer
Yep.
because you want to solve problems. And problems, if anything, they're going to explode in terms of the amount of problems that you're going to be able to solve
Mhm.
and that are going to be demanded as an engineer of you. So yeah, I'm bullish about AI in general, and I'm especially bullish in that it will, in some ways, free us up from what now is considered, I would consider a low level, like a lower
Mhm.
level
Yep.
activity that humans won't be doing, which is pure coding lines into a text editor.
Yep. Well, look, I think you're in good company on that last opinion. That was how Andy Jassy launched the Amazon's code assistant was, we launched AWS to take away the low value add tasks of having to deal with infrastructure. There's still a lot of low value tasks that software engineers need to do in just memorizing functions and commands and writing that in. And so the idea is to shift people more to problem solving and have the AI writing that code. I really like that as a view of the future because the reality is that like we've all interviewed two types of software engineers. There was the type that sees code as a tool to solve problems. And then there was the type that they just want to see a Trello ticket and kill that ticket and move on to the next task. And they'll write just to the specs and not think anymore about it. That first, the problem solving engineer was always 10 times more valuable. That's what everybody always wanted to work with anyway. So the fact that becomes more of the job, I think is a super positive thing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you said something really interesting though, that don't often hear that I wanted you to expand on. You said the types of problems that we'll be able to solve or the types of problems we'll be working on will expand as well. Tell me a little bit more about what you're
Mm.
thinking on that front.
Yeah, I would say like, I mean, it's hard to know which problems, right? But with
Hmm.
every technical revolution come a whole new set of problems that need solved, right? Because product, like you unlock, and I like this framing that, for example, authors like Paul Graham, by the way, I love
Yeah.
his blog.
Yeah.
That's another blog recommendation that they have, right? Every time you put a dent in the universe, it kind of like has a fractal explosion of new
Hmm.
problems where you can apply that new discovery that you've made, right? So, I mean, let's think before the ENIAC, right? Or computers, right? Back in the
Hmm.
50s. I mean, did you have as many problems to solve, for example, for, yeah, we can trace a very squiggly line between the ENIAC and making sure that your SEO is AI enabled, right? That didn't even exist, right? When in the
Yeah.
50s, you would tell a person about SEO And you tell a marketer about SEO these days, and they're like, yeah, that's a problem. It's always a problem. We need
Yeah.
to fix SEO. We need to improve it. We need to have an SEO strategy. You talk about a person, you talk to a person in the 50s. Yeah, you have to have an SEO strategy. And they're like, what? What is this?
Chinese.
Exactly. So it's hard to predict exactly which kinds of problems people will
Mhm.
have in the next 20 years. But I mean, we can map some things, but it's true that the amount of problems that we have to solve right now is fractally higher than the kinds of problems that we had in the 50s, right? And
Mhm.
with and that's how, like, I guess it's an optimistic view of technology and progress on my end. But that is that we're not going to run out of jobs. Like, jobs will
Mhm.
always be there, and people will find purpose and will find value for their human activities in many ways.
Yep.
We're not going to run out of jobs. And that's what many people are worried. Like, robots are taking our jobs. Like, no, many jobs will
Mhm.
change. Many jobs will disappear, but the amount of new jobs will uh, definitely tower over the amount of jobs that are going to become obsolete.
Yeah, look, I think that point of view is much easier to grasp for engineers who work with this
Yeah.
stuff every single day. The other thing that's interesting is that it seems to be easier to grasp for a lot of international people because of what we do at Revelo. I spend a lot of time through Latin America. And when I look at the things that have created a lot of new jobs and made society better, it's often been technology firms like Uber, Waze, etc., made incredible improvements in the economies of, say, Sao Paulo, which is a giant city in Latin America. And I think it's probably the same across Europe as well. And one of the things I think sometimes Americans undervalue about their own country, because technology is just so built into the fabric of a place like San Francisco, is how much benefit these tools and technologies bring everywhere on the world, not just, in the city that they were created. So to
Yeah.
kind of see that exploding, I think sometimes makes it easier for international people to see.
It's true. Yeah. I feel like people, they take it for granted in San Francisco that tech progress is going to be a certain way, but you have second and third order effects that are hard to really think about, right? But it's been a constant through history that technological progress
Yeah,
has given way to way more
agreed that.
problems to solve. That's
Well, so then let's talk a little bit about your career over the past year or so. Everybody, I think, uh, everybody in technology all the time always has that thing in their mind of like, oh, maybe should I start a business one day? Should I keep my director of engineering role? What should I do? Tell me a little bit about your journey. Why did you decide now's the time to start a business, and how did it come about?
Yeah. So in my particular journey, I guess I stopped telling my story up until I became an engineering manager, but I kept growing. I kept leveraging myself, and I ended up as head of engineering for Stride. I was happy. I had great projects, great things to do, but I started missing again going back to building from scratch. I felt like I remember clearly. I started checking out ChatGPT, checking out the APIs, and just doing small little things with it with GPT 3.5. And I was really enthusiastic. I thought it had many useful applications, but the moment was many engineering leaders already know about this, but the moment where I was like, okay, this is a revolution. I need to just stop right there, stop what I'm doing and start thinking about how I can go back to building from scratch in a in a radically new way. And that was when I read some documentations. It's called LangChain. It's a framework for AI engineering. And I read the docs from start to end in one sitting because I was obsessed. I became like, my eyes were double the size that they are right now. My mouth was open. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. This is one of the craziest things that I've ever seen in my life. And it works. So yeah, I decided to start exploring in earnest and seeing how you can apply AI to change healthcare, hopefully this time for the better, and really try and fix it and give way to a different way of caring for other humans. that
Mhm.
takes humans into the equation, doesn't, again, aligns with my thinking of not replacing them, but empowering them, and really allows us to be happier, healthier, and more productive to more fulfilling lives. That mix between this technological revolution, doing good things for humanity, it really has driven me. Stayed a few months more exploring in nights and weekends, creating prototypes. I was very excited, working a lot because I virtually had 2 jobs. And then I decided to pull the trigger late last year, late in 2023. I decided to start my own company. I had met my co-founder through there, Sunita, and we were thinking about the same things at about the same time. And it really was a great fit, great match for both of us. And we decided to start Vibrant. And yeah, it's honestly right now the best time in arguably history to really think about the future, because AI is underrated long term. I'm happy to also get a little deeper on what we do at Vibrant.
Let's do that. But I just want to hear I just want to make sure I understood that start, because
Yeah.
that jumping moment, I think, is really interesting for everyone. So for you, it was seeing the new technology and then realizing what this new technology was capable of just made you think this.
Yeah.
Is that the right is that what drove it?
I've always been thinking about, how can you make healthcare work in the US,
Yeah.
right? So at
Yeah.
Stride, we drove benefits and finances and a safety net. We built a safety net for Uber, for DoorDash, for Instacart, for all of these large gig companies that had these gig workers that were underserved by benefits. So we created a safety net for them. Great. But still, the root of the issue is much deeper. It's not a question of benefits. It's a question of, like, there's a certain amount of human time that can be
Hmm.
dedicated to care, and that won't scale, but you can make everything else scale and make it work. So
Yeah.
that, in my view, was, can we create high data, high touch model of care that can be done at scale for the general population, right? You would see these, like, tiny slivers of the population getting that kind of high data, high
Yeah.
touch care, but they pay 2 million a year, like Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
how can everyone have their own doctor team, their own physician team,
Hmm.
uh, but without spending 2 million a year, right? Just with
Yep.
their insurance, just with a small membership fee. How can we create that? And AI really is a sea change on making that happen. And you can create this concept of super physicians that we have,
Mhm.
right? Like super doctors that are able to uh, leverage AI to the same way as we were explaining in terms of software engineers, that they can have a swarm of software engineering AI agents
Yep.
creating code for them. You can do the same as a physician. It's in a much
Hmm.
earlier stage, but you can have a swarm of medical AI agents who take care of all of the complexity that healthcare has and make the economics work for this kind of care. So
Yep.
that was the great realization, and one thing led to the other, and that's what really sits at the root of our new company, Vibrant.
I think it's such a great example of what you were talking about before, where new technologies allow you to attack new problems. Like I think maybe for the tech people, an analogy which is a little easier is you see companies like AngelList. And in the past, possible because you needed a lawyer to review documents, and there was just no way of getting around it. Like there had to be a human lawyer there to review it. And with AI and some of these LLMs, you can start taking the lawyers out of the equation. Then you have software doing what used to be a $500,000 a year per person, an unscalable job. And you can quite easily imagine, well, a lot of those same dynamics are probably going to apply to doctors, where I'm sure there's some things that the doctor just absolutely has to do person to person and it has to be him. But then I'm sure that there's ways to make him much more scalable than usual. So it's a really great area. I think healthcare everyone's excited about is like an area that, hey, maybe we can finally make some progress on the core issues that in the past kind of eluded everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. Because AI is also a technology that's really easy to use. It really is
Yeah.
natural language. You don't have to fill out forms. You don't have to code. You can really work with AI with natural language, and that's super powerful in itself. And I believe for people like doctors who are used to treating other people and putting no to natural language is just making the whole set of healthcare operations programmable and freeing these physicians to actually be human to human, as you're mentioning, because that's never going to go away. You can't, in some ways, you can get advice from an AI, but if it's another human who's giving you that advice and that other human can relate to you in a human way, you're going to drive behavior team, which is at the key of good healthcare, like making you change your behavior so you have a healthy behavior, so you prevent what comes downstream of bad behavior.
So you're now building or lining up to build your own team. How are you going to build it? Are you going to be fully remote, hybrid, all in the office?
Yeah.
Done AI?
Yeah.
How do you think of hiring and running a team?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're actually distributed. We're a distributed team. We have a small office here in Miami where I'm based. We have another small office in San Francisco, but by default, we're fully remote, right? All of our processes are designed to work with a remote distributed team. And that's a strategy that we're following as we're expanding the team. As we all know, talent can be found anywhere. And especially in the medical field and in healthcare, there's great pockets of talent that are not in the usual suspects, like Silicon Valley, San Francisco, even New York City. There's, for example, a lot of talent in Nashville. Nashville has a lot of great healthcare companies, health tech companies, people, plenty of experience. So it's very different than just pure software that you would say like, okay, a pure software company, San Francisco is where it's at. There's a lot of talent distributed all over the US who have deep insight on how healthcare works that you really can't find in San Francisco. And so that's how we're modeling our company. Is we're modeling it as remote first.
Remote first just within the US, or have you started to look across Latin America, Europe, other areas as well?
Yeah. And that's the other point, right? Probably for the like healthcare operations and more of the business side of healthcare, it's natural that we just focus locally in the US. In terms of engineering, in terms of product design for many areas, we truly believe that having a global team is the way to go, especially given the industry and the economic situation, financing options, the environment, the VC environment that we sit at. You would be a subpar steward of capital if you don't rely on a global workforce, because great talent, great engineering talent, especially, is distributed everywhere. And we've been focused, I would say, like more tactically, we've been focused on expanding our team across Latin America. The main advantage of Latin America is the time zone, right? We can overlap almost every hour of the day. And for such an early stage team, we do need constant communication at all times. It's difficult to have teams in different time zones where the round trip for information can be as much as 16 hours. So you're finishing your day, they're starting theirs, 8 hours a day for them. And it's just really hard to make good progress.
Yeah, it's a massive shift in work habits to have to log off and hand everything over to one team and then receive something different next week.
And people have cracked it. Some people have cracked it with great later stage, but we don't have that yet.
I mean, it's doable, but I think people expect me to be a proponent for always all remote all the time for every company. That's not the case. GitLab was fully distributed across the entire world and completely async from day one. And that's fantastic. That's a very unique company. Not many people can replicate that. The same as like, if you're a very sales heavy company, like you're probably going to have to hire your sales team in the office. But engineering teams, I really like the phrase you use, like so many engineering teams now remote within time zones that I like that phrase. You're a subpar steward of capital if you're not looking at it. Like it's more than 50% now we're doing it. So if you're in the minority of where you're hiring from, like it's worth examining why and whether there's a real reason for that. But look, I'd love to hear, I think just as we're starting to wrap up here, it'd be great to hear your learnings of do's and don'ts. I imagine from pre-COVID, you were probably in person to how you're running your teams today.
Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a bit to unpack here, but yeah, I mean, we were one of those companies at Stride that in March 6th, 2020,
Yeah.
everyone was in the office. A week later, nobody was in the office,
Yep.
and we didn't know when we were coming back. So it was definitely an exercise in, okay, we need to overhaul all our processes because we don't know when we're going to come back to the office. And it turns out we never did. We ended up never doing it because in the end, being fully remote unlocked a lot of things, a lot of great things for the company. Unlocked us to find talent elsewhere, among them to build a team in Latin America, an engineering team in America that was definitely a first-class citizen of the team and completely embedded in our culture. And we just got a lot of stuff done. Like it
Yep.
really, when many organizations and many people, especially in some VC circles, they say like, no, in office is the way to go. Maybe it's the way to go for a very early stage, but once you have your processes, you have a company that's scaling and it has more clarity of purpose and product market fit. It's really productive and it's really efficient to build a fully remote team that expands beyond borders, right? So in terms of learnings, I would say that our biggest learning from hiring in Latin America was to really have to navigate the differences in how you relate to your employees in different countries, right? Because it's one thing to have a distributed team inside the US. The most you have to do is to just run some processes to get authorized to employ people in other states. That's fine. And that's pretty straightforward. But labor laws, processes are roughly the same. The main problem about hiring remotely, and I believe a lot of good work has been done since we had these learnings, but labor laws and all of the dynamics of every single country are different. And just probably having a minimum common denominator for all of the countries doesn't really work. So I would say the first learning that we had is probably focus on one country initially, right? If you can, a bigger market like Argentina, like Brazil. In our case, we chose Brazil. It's a large market with great startups that have come out, a lot of ex-Nubank people. We hired some ex-Nubank people coming from Brazil. And it simplifies, especially for a startup with not infinite resources, it simplifies the onboarding of a global workforce. And we made that mistake and we then switched course to focusing on one geo at a time, starting with the bigger markets and build from there. You got to start small. Otherwise, if you're just opening up the requisitions to too many markets, you're going to have to deal with the nuances of every single market. And I know that that's a problem to be solved, right? To that conversation that we've been having. And I believe really smart people are solving that problem. And I'm sure now it's much better than before.
Yeah. No, look, it definitely is. I mean, there have been platforms like Revelo is one of them that makes it just as easy to hire across any country as it would be to hire in your own home city. But at the same time, I think your advice still really holds in that there's a reason people tend to build up pockets of engineering teams. Like you mentioned, we got some great guys from Nubank and they got some others. But if you had a few engineers from there, they've got an incredible engineering team. If you had a few engineers from there join you, they then start to tell their friends, hey, there's this great company. It's really interesting work. You should check it out. You can build a great engineering culture by focusing your efforts on one particular area, just the same as you would probably do back home.
That's right.
Well, look, I think that's running us up at about time today. So, man, really appreciate your time. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, Lex. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, look, I think last point, how can people stay in touch with you? Is there a Twitter, LinkedIn, website you want to refer people to? We'll stick it in the show notes as well, but give people a call out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can. I mean, I'm most active these days on actually on Twitter. I don't post as much lately because other things are taking much of my time, but definitely connect with me on Twitter. Send me a DM. I'm happy to even like connect with people. I have my calendar link set up for just connecting with interesting, smart people. So yeah, my Twitter handle is my name, Pedro Tabio, and same with LinkedIn. That's the LinkedIn handle that I have. Also, you can follow me there. You can connect with me through there, and I'll be happy to just pull a call. And if anyone has any other follow ups, I'm happy to.
Thanks, man.